They called the cops on an 8-year-old black genius, handcuffed him in front of the whole first-class cabin, and humiliated him like a criminal. He whispered through tears, "I just wanted to solve math problems." But then, one phone call from his father, America's most powerful tech billionaire, froze $1.4 billion and shattered a nationwide conspiracy. This isn't just about racism on a plane. It's about betrayal, power, and a twist that will leave you speechless. Stay with me, because what happens next will change the way you look at justice forever. 8-year-old Ethan Cole pressed his small hands against the smooth leather of the first-class seat and exhaled with quiet wonder. For most kids his age, air travel meant cramped economy seats and restless fidgeting. But today was different. Today, he was flying alone from Los Angeles to Boston, not for a vacation, but to receive one of the most prestigious mathematics awards in the world. At only 8 years old, Ethan had solved problems most graduate students struggled to understand. And tonight, he would stand on a stage filled with the brightest minds in America. He wore a crisp white shirt, navy blue slacks, and his favorite pair of glasses that always slid down his nose when he smiled. He was small for his age, yet there was an unmistakable confidence in his eyes. Confidence not from arrogance, but from the quiet knowledge of someone who had spent more time with equations than video games. Ethan was a prodigy, but he was also still a child. Nervous about flying alone, missing his father, Richard Cole, and wishing his mother were still alive to see this moment. "Kid, this seat isn't for you." The sharp, almost mocking voice yanked Ethan out of his thoughts. Standing before him was Megan Price, the lead flight attendant, her perfectly pressed uniform and clipped bun projecting authority. But it wasn't professionalism in her eyes. It was judgment. Ethan blinked, unsure if she was talking to him. "Excuse me?" he asked softly, pushing his glasses up. Megan crossed her arms and tilted her head. "This is seat 1A, first class. Are you sure you're in the right place? Show me your boarding pass." Passengers nearby looked up, their conversations silenced. The soft ambiance of pre-flight boarding shifted into awkward tension. People craned their necks, phones subtly raised to record, ready for some unexpected drama. Ethan reached into his backpack and pulled out the boarding pass, hands trembling slightly. "Here," he said quietly. Megan snatched the pass and scanned it, her lips pursing. First class, huh? And traveling alone?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "My dad booked my ticket." Megan arched an eyebrow. "Your dad booked a first-class ticket for an 8-year-old alone? That doesn't sound right. We have policies, you know. Kids don't just waltz into first class unsupervised." Her tone wasn't just skeptical, it was dismissive, like she had already decided he didn't belong. The passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some murmured, others exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of the situation, but intrigued enough not to look away. "I have ID," Ethan said softly, pulling out a school-issued card with his name and picture. Megan glanced at it, then smirked. "Cute, but kids don't carry credit cards. How exactly did you pay for this ticket?" Ethan froze. He hadn't expected that question. "My dad's assistant bought it. I don't know how exactly." Megan turned toward the cabin, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Folks, I'm going to have to verify this. We might have a situation of ticket fraud here." The words landed like stones. Ticket fraud. First class. Black kid traveling alone. It was enough to shift the entire cabin's mood. A businessman in seat 2B frowned and muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous." But he didn't say it loud enough for Megan to hear. Another passenger, a middle-aged woman, pulled her phone out to start recording. Ethan's heart pounded. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet suddenly it felt like all eyes were on him. Not with curiosity, but suspicion. He gripped his backpack tighter, wishing he could disappear into the seat. "I promise, I didn't do anything wrong," Ethan whispered, his voice almost lost in the rising murmurs. Megan's lips tightened. "Stay seated, kid. I'll have to confirm this with the captain. Don't move until I say so." She turned sharply and walked toward the galley, leaving Ethan sitting rigid in his seat. blinking rapidly to keep tears from forming. The humiliation burned hot and sharp, like 1,000 tiny cuts. He thought about what his father always said. "Stay calm, Ethan. When people doubt you, let the truth be your voice." But it was hard to remember those words when strangers were staring at him as if he were a criminal. One man, seated diagonally across from Ethan, leaned forward. "Hey kid, are you sure you're in the right place? First class is expensive. Maybe they booked you wrong." Ethan's lips trembled. I'm supposed to be here." "Well, the lady doesn't seem to think so," the man replied, shrugging before leaning back in his seat. From behind, another voice chimed in, low but audible. "I mean, first class? Alone? Looks suspicious to me." Ethan clutched his tablet, the one loaded with doctoral-level calculus problems he had been working on for fun. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't look at you and assume you were a thief. But people did. A soft click drew his attention. Across the aisle, a man in his 40s, wearing a plain gray jacket, subtly adjusted his phone camera, aiming it toward Ethan. This was Daniel Brooks, a quiet passenger who had been observing in silence. He had seen enough to know something was wrong, and his instincts, honed from years in the military, told him to document everything. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Megan returned, her voice still sharp. "All right, kid, you need to explain again. How exactly did you get this ticket? Who's meeting you in Boston? Where are your parents?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm going to Boston for the Mathematics Hall of Fame ceremony. I won an award. My dad couldn't come because he's at a summit." Megan gave a condescending smile. "An award ceremony? At 8? Sure, kid. And I'm the Queen of England. Look, until we sort this out, you stay put. Don't get up, and don't touch anything." Gasps and whispers rippled through the cabin. One woman shook her head and whispered to her husband, "Poor kid. But maybe she's right." Ethan looked down at his shoes, ashamed without knowing why. He hadn't broken any rules. He had followed every instruction his father gave him. Yet here he was, being treated like a suspect. He gripped his tablet tighter and took a deep breath, whispering to himself, "Stay calm. Just stay calm." But deep inside, something heavy was settling. A fear that no matter how brilliant his mind was, no matter how innocent his intentions, people would still look at him and see only what they wanted to see. Ethan Cole sat perfectly still, the weight of every eye in first class pressing on his small frame. He adjusted his glasses and took a shaky breath, forcing himself to focus on the one thing that always brought him peace: numbers. Pulling out his tablet, he opened the complex mathematics problems he had been working on before boarding. They were doctoral-level calculus equations, the kind of problems that made even seasoned university professors sweat. The cabin had grown quieter since Megan left to verify his information, but the tension was thick, buzzing like static. A few passengers were still watching him, some curious, others judgmental, their faces betraying skepticism. Ethan's fingers moved swiftly across the screen as he solved one equation after another. For him, math was more than numbers. It was an escape, a way to silence a noisy world. He tapped into his memory, recalling the moment that had shaped him most. His mother's voice, soft yet unwavering, telling him to believe in his abilities no matter what. She had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving him and his father, Richard Cole, alone. Richard had become not just a parent, but a mentor, always telling Ethan, "People will doubt you, son, not because you've done something wrong, but because you remind them of what they don't understand. When that happens, stay calm. Let truth be your answer." He remembered a day shortly after his mother's passing. A teacher had doubted that he solved a math proof on his own, assuming he had copied it. Richard had taken him aside after school, knelt down to eye level, and said, "You don't need to yell to be heard, Ethan. You just need to let your work speak for itself." Those words echoed now as Megan's earlier humiliation replayed in his mind. But Megan wasn't done. She returned, her polished shoes tapping sharply against the cabin floor. She looked at Ethan's tablet and scoffed, loud enough for passengers to hear. "What are you doing, kid? Playing video games? TikTok?" Ethan looked up, voice small but firm. "I'm working on math problems, ma'am." Megan rolled her eyes. "Math problems? You're 8. What kind of math could you possibly be doing that requires first class?" Her words stung, but Ethan didn't respond. He simply turned his tablet so she could see. A half-completed differential equation with multiple integrals sprawled across the screen. Megan stared for a second, confused, then laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, sure. Copying from Google, huh?" Across the aisle, Daniel Brooks shifted in his seat. He had been quiet this entire time, but now his instincts kicked in. Daniel was a former Air Force security officer, trained to spot injustice and threats before they exploded into bigger problems. His gut told him this wasn't about a boarding pass, it was about bias, the kind he had seen too often during his years of service. Daniel discreetly angled his phone and began recording. His lens captured not just Ethan's trembling hands, but Megan's dismissive posture and harsh tone. He had seen enough situations escalate because no one had evidence, and he wasn't going to let that happen here. Another passenger, an older man in a tailored suit, leaned over to whisper to his wife. "He doesn't look like he belongs here. Probably a mistake." His wife hesitated but didn't respond, clearly unsure whether to agree or not. In seat 3C, a woman muttered softly, "It's just a kid. Leave him alone." But she didn't raise her voice, afraid of being dragged into confrontation. Megan looked at Ethan again, eyes narrowing. "Show me your ID one more time, and your ticket." Ethan quietly handed over the same boarding pass and school ID he had shown earlier. Megan examined them like she was inspecting counterfeit bills. Could be fake. We'll find out soon enough." She turned to the cabin again, speaking loudly. "For everyone's safety, I'm making sure this young man is where he's supposed to be. Please remain calm." Ethan clenched his fists in his lap, biting back tears. He had never felt so small, so exposed. This wasn't just about being accused of something. This was about being treated as if he had no right to even exist in that space. He focused on his tablet again, trying to drown out the whispers. Numbers made sense. They didn't care about color, age, or money. He scrolled to another problem, a proof of the Navier-Stokes existence and smoothness problem, a Millennium Prize problem most adults couldn't even understand. To Ethan, it was just another puzzle. A flight attendant in training approached Megan hesitantly. "Do you need help, ma'am?" she asked quietly. Megan waved her off. "No, I've got it. Just keep an eye on him." Daniel Brooks felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen this dynamic before. An authority figure convinced they were right, an innocent kid too shocked to defend himself, and a crowd that didn't know what to do. He whispered to himself, "Not this time." He typed a quick message on his phone, sending the video clip to an old contact from the Federal Security Agency where he once served. If this spiraled out of control, at least there would be evidence from someone who knew what he was doing. Ethan's eyes blurred slightly as he focused on another equation. It was how he coped, burying himself in numbers, building walls out of logic so he wouldn't feel the sting of humiliation. But even as he worked, one thought gnawed at him. Why do they hate me? I didn't do anything. Megan leaned closer, lowering her voice but making sure nearby passengers still heard. You know, you're making people uncomfortable. First class isn't a playground. Maybe you should move to economy until we sort this out. Ethan flinched. His father's voice echoed in his head again. Stay calm, son. Let truth be your voice. He took a deep breath and nodded slightly, though his hands trembled as he went back to solving his equation. Daniel kept recording. He knew enough to recognize that Megan's tone had crossed from procedural to personal. This wasn't about policy anymore. It was about prejudice. Several passengers exchanged looks. Some shrugged, unwilling to get involved, while others seemed increasingly uneasy. One finally spoke. Ma'am, he's just a kid. Maybe wait for confirmation before embarrassing him like this. Megan snapped back. Sir, I'm doing my job. If you don't like it, you can file a complaint later. Ethan kept his head down, scribbling notes on the tablet, but inside, his chest tightened. He wished his dad were here. He wished his mom were alive. He wished someone, anyone, would just believe him. The cabin was quiet for a few tense moments after Megan's last sharp comment, but then she made a move that shifted everything from awkward to alarming. She pulled out her crew phone, pressed a button, and spoke in a clipped, official tone that carried through the cabin. "This is Flight 447 Denver route," she said, requesting immediate law enforcement presence at arrival gate. "Possible credit card fraud involving an unaccompanied minor in first class. Suspect may be traveling with stolen credentials." The words, "credit card fraud," landed like a gunshot in the cabin. Heads snapped up, conversation stopped, and within seconds, whispers erupted. Credit card fraud? A child? The passengers didn't know what to think, but many defaulted to suspicion. One older man in a gray suit, seated just across the aisle, shook his head and muttered loudly enough to be heard, "These kids. Can't trust them. Raised without discipline, and then this happens." Another passenger chimed in, "First class with stolen credit cards? Figures." Ethan froze. He hadn't done anything wrong, but suddenly it felt like the entire cabin was against him. His throat tightened, and he hugged his tablet to his chest like it could shield him from the stares. Megan returned to his seat, looking every bit like an authority figure about to resolve a crisis. She crouched slightly so her voice carried just enough for surrounding passengers to hear. "All right, young man, let's see your bag. We need to confirm you don't have anything that doesn't belong to you." Ethan's eyes widened. My bag?" "Yes," Megan said, her tone firm and cold. "Hand it over." Ethan hesitated. That backpack wasn't just a travel bag. It held his math journals, his award invitation, and a small framed photo of his mother he never traveled without. The thought of someone rifling through it felt invasive, but he was too frightened to resist. He handed it over with trembling hands. Megan turned slightly, shielding herself from most passengers' direct view. In one smooth motion, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a slim, older model burner phone, completely untraceable. With practiced precision, she unzipped the front pouch of Ethan's backpack and slid the phone inside, closing it quietly before turning back around. "Thank you," she said aloud, making sure the nearby passengers heard her. "We'll check this for any suspicious items." Daniel Brooks, still quietly recording from his seat, narrowed his eyes. He caught something odd, a subtle movement that didn't match Megan's words, but he didn't have the perfect angle. Did she just put something in that bag? His instincts screamed yes, but he needed confirmation. Megan handed the backpack back to Ethan with a tight smile. "Hold on to this, sweetie. We'll have the police look through it once we land. Standard procedure." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "But I didn't do anything wrong?" Megan straightened, voice louder. "Then you have nothing to worry about, right? Just cooperate and everything will be fine." The whispers intensified. A woman leaned toward her husband and said, "If she called the cops, it must be serious." Her husband nodded. "Yeah, I mean, a kid alone in first class? Weird." Ethan hugged the bag tightly, the tears finally spilling down his cheeks. He tried to wipe them quickly, embarrassed. But that only made some passengers shake their heads as if his crying confirmed guilt. "Kids these days," the older man muttered again, "always thinking they can get away with stuff." One mother traveling with her own teenage son frowned. "Maybe give him a chance," she said softly, but her voice was drowned out by the murmurs of judgment filling the cabin. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had seen this kind of mob mentality before, how quickly people formed an opinion without facts. How easily bias infected a crowd. He tightened his grip on his phone, making sure every second was captured. Ethan sat silently, tears dripping onto his shirt as he stared at the floor. In his head, numbers blurred together. For once, math didn't soothe him. Instead, he thought of his father. What would Dad say? Stay calm, let truth be your voice. But how could truth speak if no one wanted to hear it? Megan, satisfied she had the situation under control, stepped away and whispered something into the intercom near the galley. Ethan couldn't hear it all, but he caught fragments. Secure the cabin. Priority landing. Law enforcement on standby. The flight felt like it had shifted into another world. One where an 8-year-old genius had become a suspect instead of a passenger. Ethan sniffled, clutching his bag tighter, as though holding onto it would keep him safe. A passenger 3 rows back leaned forward and whispered, "If he's guilty, they should press charges, teach kids like that a lesson." Daniel finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "Or maybe you should wait until there's proof." The man glared at Daniel but said nothing. The whispers dimmed slightly, but the damage was done. Ethan could feel the judgment in every glance, every sideways look. Megan returned once more, crouching down near Ethan, her voice suddenly sweet, dripping with false concern. "Look, sweetheart, if there's anything you want to tell me before we land, now's the time. It'll go easier for you." Ethan shook his head, sobbing softly. "I didn't do anything. Please, I just want to go to Boston." Megan sighed dramatically. "All right, we'll let the police handle it." She stood and addressed the cabin again. "Ladies and gentlemen, please stay seated upon landing. Security will board to handle the situation quickly." Passengers nodded, some even murmuring support. One said, "Good job staying on top of things," as if Megan had saved them from a criminal. Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew he had just witnessed an injustice in progress. Something told him that phone Megan slipped into Ethan's bag wasn't just coincidence. It was deliberate. He sent a quick text to his old contact. "Need you on standby when we land. Something bad is happening here." Meanwhile, Ethan's quiet sobs filled the small silence between whispers. He wasn't angry yet. He was scared, overwhelmed and confused. His math problems, his award ceremony, his entire sense of accomplishment, all of it felt buried under shame he didn't deserve. As the seatbelt sign dinged for descent, Ethan wiped his eyes and stared out the window. For the first time in his life, he wondered if being brilliant even mattered in a world where some people only saw the color of his skin. Ethan sat frozen, hands clasped tightly over his small backpack. The tears that had streaked his cheeks were now drying, leaving behind the hollow look of someone who had run out of ways to defend himself. His throat was raw from holding back sobs, but a thought suddenly pierced through the haze of fear. Call Dad. His father had always told him, "If things ever feel out of control, call me. Doesn't matter where you are or what time it is, call me." With trembling hands, Ethan raised his tablet and opened the secure call function his father had installed. It bypassed standard cell networks and went straight through encrypted corporate lines. The moment Richard Cole's face appeared on the screen, Ethan couldn't hold back. "Dad," his voice cracked. "I'm in trouble. I didn't do anything. Please, help." Richard's expression instantly shifted from warmth to cold, focused intensity. The look of a man used to fixing crises, only this time it was personal. His son's voice carried fear he'd never heard before. "Stay calm, son. I'm coming," Richard said evenly. But behind that calm tone was power, the kind of power that could move mountains. "Keep your head down, don't argue with anyone, and let me handle this." Ethan sniffled and nodded, wiping his face. "Okay, Dad." The entire exchange lasted less than 15 seconds, but it felt like hope had been injected straight into his chest. His father knew. His father was coming. Megan, who had returned to Ethan's row just in time to hear the last part of the conversation, snorted loudly. "Call Daddy? Cute. Won't save you," she mocked, arms crossed like she had already declared victory. Her words made a few passengers chuckle awkwardly, unsure whether to agree with her or feel embarrassed by the display of authority over a child. Daniel Brooks, however, wasn't laughing. He had seen Megan's earlier bag check and the suspicious motion she'd made slipping something into Ethan's backpack. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. This wasn't an honest mistake. This was a setup. Daniel angled his phone slightly, reviewing the footage he'd captured earlier. There it was, clear enough. Megan's hand sliding into the bag with something she hadn't pulled out. His stomach clenched. She planted evidence. His military instinct screamed to act. He opened a secure messaging app he hadn't used in years and scrolled to a name. Mark Ellis, FBI, Cybercrime Division. Mark was an old friend from his Air Force days, now working federal investigations. Need a favor, Daniel typed quickly. Passenger being framed mid-flight. Evidence planted. Sending clip now. Be ready at Denver Gate. He attached the video and hit send. Mark replied in under a minute. On it. We'll coordinate with airport security. Do not escalate on board. We'll intercept. Daniel exhaled slowly. At least someone on the ground would be ready when the plane landed. He looked back at Ethan, who had hunched into himself. Tablet clutched against his chest like armor. The kid looked so small, so out of place in a seat meant for wealthy executives and celebrities. Across the aisle, the older man who had earlier muttered about kids these days shook his head again. This generation. Think money grows on trees. Probably stole his parents' card. Daniel's jaw tightened. Sir, maybe you should wait for facts before passing judgment. The man scoffed, but said nothing else. Ethan, trying to distract himself, opened the math problem he had been working on before everything spiraled out of control. He stared at the differential equations, but his fingers shook too much to type. Normally, math calmed him, but now it felt distant, like trying to solve puzzles underwater. Dad's coming. Just stay calm, he reminded himself. In the galley, Megan was updating the captain, her voice still carrying the same cold certainty. Yes, confirmed suspicious passenger. Underage, unaccompanied, and likely fraudulent ticket purchase. I recommend law enforcement boarding upon landing. The captain gave a short nod. Fine, but keep it professional. We don't want PR issues. Already handled, Megan replied with a smirk, glancing toward Ethan. By the time we land, this'll be wrapped. Back in his seat, Daniel adjusted his phone again and took another discreet video clip of Megan smirking after her call. A small detail, but one that painted a picture of intent. Ethan whispered to himself, "Dad's coming, Dad's coming." It became a mantra, one that helped him stop crying, though his hands were still shaking. One kind-hearted passenger. A woman sitting 2 rows back finally leaned forward and said softly, "Sweetheart, it's going to be okay. Just hold tight." Her voice was warm, but hesitant, like she was afraid of stepping on Megan's authority. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, barely audible. Megan returned and gave Ethan a look that was almost victorious. "You'll hand that bag straight to security when we land. Got it?" Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Daniel had seen enough. He sent a second message to Mark Ellis. "This flight attendant is either incompetent or malicious. My footage shows a deliberate plant. Recommend full security team and body cams at gate." Mark's reply came fast. "Understood. Already mobilizing. We'll meet aircraft at gate 34. Get ready for debrief once on ground." Daniel put his phone down and looked at Ethan again. Something deep in his gut told him that this wasn't just about one overzealous flight attendant. It felt orchestrated, like Megan had an agenda. Megan leaned close to Ethan one last time before walking off. "Whatever you think your daddy can do, sweetheart, this is the real world. Actions have consequences." Ethan flinched but said nothing. He just kept repeating in his head, "Dad's coming, Dad's coming." Daniel clenched his fists under his tray table. "Hang in there, kid. This isn't over." The cabin lights dimmed as the plane began its descent into Denver International Airport. The intercom crackled with the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an unscheduled landing due to a security incident. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." A murmur spread throughout the cabin. "Security incident?" someone whispered. "Must be serious." Ethan sat rigid, gripping his backpack like it was the last safe thing in his world. He kept repeating in his mind, "Dad's coming, just stay calm." But each bump of turbulence felt like the plane was echoing his fear. From her jump seat, Megan smiled faintly. She'd won. The call had been made, the narrative set. In her eyes, Ethan was no longer a passenger. He was the suspect. The plane touched down with a hard thud, tires screeching as it slowed to a crawl. Through the small window, flashing red and blue lights glared back at the passengers. Airport police vehicles surrounded the gate, lights spinning like a crime scene unfolding in real time. Gasps filled the cabin. A woman clutched her husband's arm and whispered, "Oh my God, this is serious." "See? Even cops agree," Megan announced proudly, her voice dripping with triumph as she unbuckled and stepped toward Ethan. "Come on, kid, time to face the consequences." Ethan shrank back. "I didn't do anything," he whispered, his voice trembling. Megan crouched, forcing eye contact. "Then you have nothing to worry about, right? Stand up." Two uniformed airport police officers boarded the plane, their heavy boots echoing like hammers in the silent cabin. One officer carried a set of child-size restraints, specially designed for minors but chilling to look at nonetheless. "Is this the passenger?" one officer asked. "That's him," Megan replied confidently, pointing at Ethan like she'd just solved a major crime. The officer knelt to Ethan's level. "Son, stand up, hands out in front." Ethan's eyes widened in horror. "I didn't do anything wrong," he cried, tears starting again. "Please, I didn't steal anything." "It's just protocol, son," the officer said, his tone flat. "We'll sort it out at the station." Before Ethan could say another word, cold metal cuffs clicked around his small wrists. The sound cut through the cabin like a gunshot. Phones were out instantly. Passengers recorded from every angle. One young man even went live on social media. "Yo, they're cuffing a kid on flight 447. This is insane." His stream exploded with comments. "What did he do? Why are they cuffing a child? This is messed up." Ethan sobbed as the officers gently but firmly lifted him from the seat. His feet barely touched the floor as he shuffled toward the front of the plane, cheeks wet and red. "Let this be a lesson, folks," Megan announced as if she were addressing a class. "Actions have consequences." One woman couldn't take it anymore. She stood and said loudly, "He's just a child. You don't know he did anything wrong." Megan spun on her, eyes narrowing. "Sit down, ma'am, unless you'd like to be removed from this flight as well." The woman froze, glancing at the officers, who gave no sign they would intervene on her behalf. She sat down reluctantly, muttering under her breath, "This is wrong." Ethan looked back one last time as he was led toward the exit. His eyes met hers, silently begging for someone to believe him. Daniel Brooks stayed silent but kept filming. His camera caught everything: Ethan crying, Megan's smug expression, the passengers' divided reactions. He sent another quick message to his FBI contact. "They cuffed the kid. This is worse than I thought. Get the team ready." On the live stream, comments poured in by the thousands. "They cuffed a kid? For real? This flight attendant is power tripping. Wait until this hits national news." But for now, the people in the cabin weren't thinking about public outrage. They were thinking about what they had just witnessed firsthand: a child in handcuffs, accused of a crime he hadn't committed, led away by police as if he were dangerous. Megan turned back to the cabin, clapping her hands once. "Everyone remain seated until officers clear the plane. Thank you for your cooperation." The woman who had spoken up earlier whispered to her husband, "They're treating him like a criminal. He's 8. Her husband shook his head. "Doesn't matter. If the cops are involved, he probably did something." That single sentence summed up the mood of half the passengers. If the cops are here, he must be guilty. The other half sat in stunned silence, unsure how to process what they had just seen. Daniel clenched his jaw. He'd seen kids cry before, on battlefields, in refugee camps, but this was different. This was avoidable. This was wrong. As Ethan was escorted down the jet bridge, his voice cracked one last time. "I didn't do anything." But no one moved. A few seats back, a teenager muttered, "This is going viral for sure." He wasn't wrong. By the time the plane's door closed behind Ethan and the officers, the live stream had already hit 20,000 viewers, climbing by the second. Megan adjusted her uniform, smoothing her skirt like she'd just completed a routine safety check. "All right, folks, let's get ready for reboarding procedures once security clears." Daniel finally spoke up, his voice steady but cold. "You sure about what you just did?" Megan didn't even look at him. "I did my job. If you have a problem, file a complaint. Daniel's hand tightened around his phone. He had the video of Megan planting the phone, the smirk after her call, the smug announcement after Ethan's arrest, and soon everyone else would see it too. But for now, the image burned into everyone's mind was simple. A crying child in handcuffs, and a flight attendant who looked far too proud of herself. The Denver police escort marched Ethan down the jet bridge, his small wrists still restrained, his cheeks streaked with tears. Outside, the flashing lights of police cruisers lit up the rainy tarmac. But above those spinning lights came the low, unmistakable growl of 3 black SUVs speeding toward the gate with military precision. The SUVs stopped abruptly, engines rumbling like sleeping beasts. Doors swung open almost in unison, and out stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal gray suit. His presence alone made officers pause. Richard Cole. The name alone carried weight across boardrooms, courtrooms, and congressional halls. He wasn't just another billionaire CEO. He was one of the country's largest investors in aviation technology, a man whose company had defense contracts and advanced avionics patents powering half the airline industry. And he was also Ethan's father. Behind Richard emerged 2 of his top security agents, wearing earpieces and scanning the area with sharp, trained eyes, followed by a sharply dressed attorney carrying a slim leather briefcase. The atmosphere shifted instantly, as though gravity itself had changed. Richard didn't waste time with pleasantries. He walked straight to the lead police officer, voice steady but edged with restrained fury. "That's my son. Remove those cuffs immediately." The officer hesitated. "Sir, do I look like someone you can stall?" Richard cut him off, his voice dropping an octave. "He is 8 years old. You're restraining him based on what exactly?" The officer glanced at Megan, who stepped forward, almost smug. Mr. Cole, we have reason to believe your son was traveling on a stolen credit card. We found this." She pulled out the burner phone she'd planted earlier, holding it up like a trophy. "It fell out of his bag, likely stolen property." Richard's gaze moved from the phone to Megan. "And you are?" "Megan Price, lead flight attendant. I'm responsible for passenger safety, and your son raised red flags from the moment he boarded." Her tone dripped with fake professionalism, but her smirk betrayed her confidence. She believed she had won. Richard stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Megan. "That's my son's backpack. That's my son's seat. And you're accusing him of theft?" His eyes burned into hers. "Do you have cabin camera footage of this supposed discovery?" Megan blinked, then forced a laugh. "Camera's not working today. Maintenance issue. But several passengers saw the phone fall out of his bag." The crowd of passengers, who had been disembarking and gathering at the terminal windows, collectively gasped. "The cameras aren't working?" one whispered. Another muttered, "That's convenient." Richard's jaw tightened. "So let me be clear. You're accusing an 8-year-old of theft, without working cameras, without any proof of where that phone came from, and based solely on your word?" Megan straightened her shoulders. "Sir, I'm trained to detect suspicious behavior. I know what I saw." Richard took one step forward, his voice lowering to a dangerous calm. "You're about to regret every word of this." He turned to the officers. "Take those cuffs off my son, now." The officers exchanged uncertain looks. One began to reach for the key, but Megan interjected. "You can't. He's a suspect." "Enough." The word cut through the air like a blade. It hadn't come from Richard. It came from another voice. Daniel Brooks stepped out from the small crowd of passengers, his phone raised. "Actually, I think you all need to see something before this goes any further." Megan frowned. "Sir, this is a security matter." "No," Daniel interrupted, his tone sharp and commanding. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black wallet, flipping it open to reveal a gold badge. "Daniel Brooks, former federal air marshal and security advisor, and I've been recording this entire incident since takeoff." The room froze. The crowd hushed. Even Richard raised an eyebrow, momentarily surprised. Daniel continued, voice steady. "I have video of this flight attendant. He pointed directly at Megan, planting that phone in this child's backpack while pretending to search it. I also have recordings of her repeatedly escalating a situation that didn't exist, ignoring passenger concerns and humiliating a minor without probable cause. The silence was deafening. Megan's face drained of color. That's not true. He must be mistaken. Daniel tapped his phone, and the screen lit up with crystal clear footage. Megan's hand sliding into Ethan's backpack during her bag check. Gasps rippled through the onlookers like a wave. Richard crossed his arms, eyes narrowing. "So this is your evidence? You planted it?" Megan stuttered, her earlier confidence evaporating. That's not what it looks like. I was securing the cabin." Daniel cut her off. "Don't bother. This video is time-stamped and already uploaded to secure cloud storage. Even if you smash my phone right now, the data is safe, and it's being reviewed by federal authorities as we speak." Megan took a step back, suddenly aware of how alone she was. The passengers who had once looked skeptical of Ethan now glared at her, some raising their own phones to record her. Richard stepped closer to his son, kneeling to unfasten the restraints himself. "It's okay, Ethan. You're safe now." His voice softened for the first time since stepping off the SUV. The officer, realizing the gravity of the situation, finally unlocked the cuffs. Ethan rubbed his wrists, eyes wide and teary. "Dad," he whispered. Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm here now, son. Nobody's going to hurt you again." Then he stood and faced Megan, his eyes like steel. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Daniel slid his phone back into his pocket. "Mr. Cole, airport security and FBI contacts are already waiting outside. They'll want statements. But for now, I suggest you take your son and let them handle her." Richard nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks. You've done more for my son in 30 minutes than some people here did all day." Megan opened her mouth as if to protest, but her words faltered under the weight of 100 angry eyes and one damning video. Daniel Brooks held his phone high, turning the screen so everyone gathered in the gate area could see. The crisp, clear footage played, showing Megan's hand slipping into Ethan's backpack during what was supposed to be a security check. Her movements were deliberate, smooth, and calculated. There was no mistaking it. The crowd gasped in unison. Someone muttered, "She planted it." Another whispered, "Oh my God, she framed him." Megan's face turned white as paper. That's not what it looks like," she stammered, backing up a step. Daniel's voice rang out like steel. "This footage is time-stamped, stored securely, and already sent to federal authorities. You can explain yourself to the FBI, Ms. Price." "Wait, this is insane. He could have—" Megan began, but her words were drowned out by passengers shouting, "We all saw it. You lied about that kid. Shame on you." Megan's breathing quickened, panic flashing across her face. She turned suddenly, making a dash toward the opposite end of the gate as if escape was an option. "Stop right there!" barked one of the airport police officers. He moved faster than Megan expected, catching her by the arm and twisting it gently behind her back. The burner phone, still clutched in her hand, clattered to the floor. "You're under detention pending investigation for filing a false report and evidence tampering," the officer said, securing her wrists with handcuffs. Megan thrashed once, then froze as the reality sank in. The same cold cuffs she had proudly ordered onto an 8-year-old were now locked around her own wrists. Gasps turned into a wave of murmurs, then into applause from several passengers. Richard Cole stepped forward, voice steady but brimming with anger. "Officers, I want her booked for fabrication of evidence, child endangerment, and racial discrimination. She humiliated my son, endangered him, and wasted law enforcement resources on a lie." One officer nodded firmly. "Understood, sir. We'll take her into custody for questioning and notify federal authorities." Megan's eyes darted wildly, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But no one came. Even her fellow flight attendants, who had earlier stood by silently, now avoided eye contact. Ethan clung to his father's arm, his small voice trembling. "Dad, why did she hate me so much?" Richard knelt, gently brushing his son's hair back. Because some people are afraid of what they don't understand, son. But you didn't do anything wrong. Remember that. Daniel stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. You handled yourself better than most adults would. Don't ever forget that. The passengers, still stunned by what they had seen, began to approach slowly, one by one. The older man, who had muttered, "These kids can't be trusted," earlier cleared his throat awkwardly. "Son, I'm sorry. I judged you before I even knew you." Ethan nodded slightly, eyes still red. "It's okay, sir." A woman who had been recording from her phone spoke next. "I believed her because she wore the uniform. I should have said something sooner." Richard straightened, eyes sweeping the crowd. "Apologies are good, but learn from this. Next time you see someone being humiliated for no reason, don't stay silent." His voice carried not just anger, but authority, the kind that made people listen. Daniel tapped his phone, projecting the video onto one of the terminal's large digital displays, ensuring no one could claim they hadn't seen it. The footage looped. Megan's sly hand motion, Ethan's confusion, Megan's smug expression afterward. A teenager whispered to his friend, "This is gonna blow up online, like viral in 10 minutes. He wasn't wrong. The original live stream from earlier had already exploded on social media. And now, with Daniel's footage as irrefutable proof, hashtags began trending instantly. Justice for Ethan. #Stop Airline Racism. #Megan Price Exposed. The officer escorting Megan glanced at Richard. "We'll file charges and notify you once she's processed. Given your position, sir, expect quick follow-up." Richard gave a curt nod. "I'll also be filing civil action. People like her don't just hurt kids, they create a culture where innocent people suffer. That ends today." Megan's shoulders sagged as she was led away, her once proud posture broken. The sight was surreal. Moments ago she had wielded power like a weapon, and now she was the one being judged. Ethan looked at Daniel. "Thank you for helping me." Daniel smiled softly. "You didn't deserve any of this, kid. I just did what was right." A ripple of applause began. Soft at first, then louder. Some passengers even approached Ethan to shake his small hand or offer kind words. "You're a strong kid. Sorry we doubted you. You keep doing your math, okay? Don't let this change who you are." Ethan smiled weakly for the first time since boarding the plane. For a moment, the weight of what had just happened lifted slightly. Richard wrapped an arm around his son and addressed the crowd one last time. "Thank you to those who stepped up, and for those who didn't. Remember how this felt. Choose better next time." He turned to Daniel. "You'll hear from my office. You saved my son from a nightmare." Daniel shrugged modestly. "Just doing my duty, even if I'm not in uniform anymore." The gate area, moments ago tense and hostile, now buzzed with a strange mix of shame, relief, and awe. A collective lesson had been learned in real time, and everyone knew it would follow them long after they left Denver. The terminal was still buzzing from Megan's arrest when one of the airport police officers approached Richard Cole and Daniel Brooks, holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside it was the burner phone Megan had planted in Ethan's backpack. "Mr. Cole," the officer said, "we've already done a quick forensic scan. You'll want to hear this." Richard gave a single nod, eyes sharp. "Show me." The officer unlocked the phone using an override tool and opened the message app. There it was, a chain of encrypted texts with a contact saved only as HAG. The messages were chillingly clear. HAG. Deliver a disruption big enough to hit news cycles. Focus on Cole's kid. Must look organic. Megan Price. Understood. Payment first half received. We'll handle next flight personally. HAG. Full amount after public fallout. Make it ugly. Richard's jaw tightened. HAG. He turned to Daniel. That's Hawk Aviation Group. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Cole Technology's biggest competitor. The officer continued scrolling. Another message appeared, time-stamped just hours before the flight. Megan Price. Have internal contact on board. Captain will cooperate if things get messy. Daniel whistled under his breath. This wasn't just prejudice. This was corporate sabotage. Passengers nearby gasped as word spread quickly. The whole thing was planned. This wasn't just one woman's bias or bad judgment. This was an orchestrated attempt to humiliate the child of one of America's most powerful tech executives. Richard clenched his fists, his voice low and lethal. "Where's your captain?" The lead officer pointed to a corner of the terminal where the pilot stood, looking pale as security agents surrounded him. "Captain Miller, you're under investigation for conspiracy and aiding in a false security report," an agent announced. The captain tried to argue. "This is ridiculous. I was just following procedure." Daniel cut him off, flashing his badge again. "Procedure doesn't include coordinating with flight attendants to stage evidence. We have your messages on that phone, Captain. You're done." The pilot's face drained of color as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Passengers watching the scene erupted into shocked chatter. One whispered, "This is bigger than we thought." Another said, "They tried to take down Richard Cole's kid to tank his company stock?" Richard ignored the noise. He pulled out his own phone and dialed a secure line, voice firm and unwavering. "Connect me to financial operations. Priority Alpha." Within seconds, a calm voice answered. "Mr. Cole, ready for instructions. Freeze every Hawk-related account immediately. Use emergency clause Delta." "Confirming. Executing freeze on all Hawk Aviation Group domestic and offshore accounts," the voice replied. Daniel blinked. "You can just freeze their money?" Richard's gaze was cold. When someone uses a child as leverage to destabilize a company, they forfeit their right to play fair. Hawk wanted a scandal? They're about to have a crisis. The officer holding the burner phone looked uneasy. "Mr. Cole, you should know. This isn't just about stock manipulation. If these texts are authentic, it falls under federal economic sabotage statutes. We're talking prison time." Richard gave a thin, grim smile. "Good. Let them rot." Ethan, still holding his father's hand tightly, looked up with wide eyes. "Dad, did they do all this just to hurt you?" Richard knelt and met his son's gaze. "They tried to hurt you because they couldn't beat me in business. But what they didn't count on is that you're stronger than all of them put together." Ethan's lip trembled, but he nodded bravely. "I wasn't scared when you called. I knew you'd come." Daniel stepped closer. "Cole, I've seen a lot of ugly in my career, but this is next level. They used racism as a weapon to destabilize markets. That's not just cruel, it's strategic warfare." Richard's expression hardened. "And they thought we wouldn't fight back." He turned to his attorney, who had been quietly taking notes. "File for immediate injunctions against Hawk Aviation. Full press release within the hour. Make sure the markets know this was sabotage and we have proof." The attorney nodded. "Understood. By tomorrow morning, Hawk Aviation's board will be begging for mercy." Meanwhile, Megan, sitting cuffed against a terminal wall, overheard everything. Her earlier arrogance was gone, replaced with pure panic. I didn't know it would go this far. They said it was just a job." Richard's glare cut through her like a blade. "You endangered my son for a paycheck. That's not a job. That's a betrayal of everything decent." Passengers, still processing the new revelation, turned their anger toward Megan and the captain. What had started as whispers of judgment toward Ethan was now a storm of condemnation aimed squarely at the conspirators. A woman in business attire shook her head. "They almost ruined an 8-year-old's life for corporate gain." The older man who had doubted Ethan earlier stepped forward again, looking directly at Richard and then at Ethan. I can't believe I thought he was guilty. I'm sorry, kid. Really." Ethan offered a small smile. "It's okay. Now you know the truth." Daniel stepped back, scanning the room. "This is going to blow up. Hawk Aviation just nuked their reputation, and they don't even know it yet." Richard's phone buzzed. A voice from his finance team spoke quickly. "Sir, all Hawk Aviation accounts are frozen. Estimated $1.4 billion impacted." Richard's response was cold and deliberate. "Keep them frozen until further notice. Send compliance alerts to regulators and prepare for litigation." He ended the call and looked around. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was more than discrimination. It was corporate warfare, and it ends now. Passengers applauded, some even cheering. The sense of despair from earlier had transformed into outrage and unity, as if everyone had just realized they were part of something much bigger. Ethan squeezed his father's hand again. "Dad, can we still go to Boston? For the award?" Richard smiled faintly. "Yes, son. And when you walk on that stage, you'll know you stood tall against something bigger than math problems. You stood against hate itself." Daniel smirked. "Kid, after today, you're going to need a bigger trophy shelf." The ripple effect of Richard Cole's phone call traveled faster than most people could comprehend. Within 10 minutes of his command, Hawk Aviation Group's accounts, totaling $1.4 billion in insurance reserves, corporate liquidity, and pending international transactions, froze solid. Compliance teams from 3 major financial institutions locked down access, flagging suspicious activity alerts to the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Overnight, Hawk Aviation's seemingly untouchable empire had gone from a competitor to a corporate crime scene. Newsrooms across the country erupted. Social media, already ablaze from the live-streamed footage of Ethan's wrongful arrest and Daniel Brooks's explosive video, now had new fuel. Flight attendant caught in corporate sabotage scandal. Cable networks switched to wall-to-wall coverage. CNN ran the headline, "Corporate Warfare in the Skies. CEO's Child Targeted in Plot." CNBC brought on financial analysts who debated in real time whether Hawk Aviation could survive such an immediate liquidity freeze. Even entertainment shows picked up the story, looping images of Meghan being led away in handcuffs next to captions like, "Sabotage in First Class." Inside Hawk Aviation's headquarters, chaos reigned. Executives scrambled to reassure investors and employees, but nothing worked. By midday, Hawk Aviation's stock plummeted by 34%, wiping out billions in market value. Traders on Wall Street nicknamed the crash the Meghan effect. The fallout within the airline Meghan worked for was equally devastating. The CEO of Atlantic Star Airlines, the carrier operating Flight 447, held an emergency press conference. Effective immediately, all employees connected to this incident, directly or indirectly, have been suspended pending investigation. We are working with federal authorities to ensure full transparency and accountability. That same day, over a dozen employees were placed on leave, including several managers who had previously vouched for Meghan's exemplary record. Meghan herself, sitting in a federal holding cell, watched the live coverage on a wall-mounted television. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, her posture crumbled. Hours earlier, she had been confident, certain she would walk away as a hero who caught a thief. Now, she was the face of one of the biggest corporate sabotage scandals of the decade. A federal agent approached the bars of her holding area, reading from a folder. "Meghan Price, you are hereby charged with child endangerment, evidence tampering, filing a false police report, and corporate espionage under federal economic sabotage statutes. Do you understand these charges?" Meghan whispered hoarsely. "Corporate espionage? I didn't sign up for that. The agent cut her off. "You took money from a corporate competitor to discredit a child because of who his father is. That is corporate espionage, and you're looking at serious time." Meanwhile, Richard and Ethan sat in a secure lounge at Denver International Airport, finally able to breathe as the chaos died down. Daniel Brooks joined them, phone still buzzing with messages from former colleagues and media outlets requesting interviews. "Richard," Daniel said, "you've got every network in the country calling this the fastest corporate counterstrike in history." Richard sipped his coffee, his face calm but eyes focused. "They tried to destroy my son's dignity and weaponize prejudice to destabilize my company. They underestimated how fast I move when my family is involved." Ethan looked up, still clutching the framed photo of his mother he kept in his bag. "Dad, is it really over?" Richard smiled faintly. "The worst part is over, but what comes next is accountability. People like Megan, people like Hawk Aviation, they need to learn that you don't touch a child to win a war. The television in the lounge displayed a live press briefing. A Department of Justice spokesperson announced, "We are coordinating with federal regulators and the Securities and Exchange Commission regarding potential corporate espionage linked to Hawk Aviation Group. At this time, we can confirm that individuals associated with both the airline and Hawk Aviation have been detained for questioning." Daniel leaned forward, smiling. "Richard, you've just turned what they thought would be your humiliation into their destruction." "That's poetic." Richard placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Poetic justice, son. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free. It takes down everything built on lies." News alerts continued pouring in. Breaking. Federal authorities investigate Hawk Aviation for economic sabotage. Hawk Aviation stock collapses after 1.4B freeze. Public outrage grows. Child targeted in sabotage plot. By evening, the consequences were undeniable. Hawk Aviation announced the resignation of 2 senior executives, while Atlantic Star Airlines board fired 5 managers outright for failure to uphold ethical standards. Back at the detention center, Megan's attorney tried to console her. "We might negotiate down the espionage charge if we cooperate." Megan shook her head weakly. "They said it was just going to make a kid look out of place. Just one little scandal. I didn't know it would—" The attorney interrupted. "That is espionage, Megan. And with that video, you're not walking away from this." For the first time since the ordeal began, Megan realized she wasn't the hunter. She was the prey. Richard's phone buzzed again. His financial operations team reported, "Sir, Hawk Aviation's credit lines are collapsing, and several international partners are pulling out." "Good," Richard said calmly. "Make sure it stays that way until regulators finish their work. They wanted chaos. Now they have it." Daniel chuckled softly. "You just changed the landscape of 2 industries in one day, all because they picked the wrong kid." Ethan leaned against his father, finally smiling. "Can we still go to Boston tomorrow?" Richard laughed gently, hugging his son. "Yes, Ethan. And when you walk onto that stage, you'll show them that you weren't just a victim. You were the spark that exposed an entire conspiracy." The video Daniel Brooks had recorded was no longer just evidence for investigators. It had become a global phenomenon. Within an hour of uploading it to his verified account, it had been viewed over 5 million times. By morning, that number had crossed 30 million. The title alone was enough to shake the internet. "Flight Attendant Frames Child in Corporate Sabotage Plot." On Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and every major platform, one hashtag surged to the top. #JusticeForEthan. By noon, it wasn't just trending in the United States. It was the #1 topic worldwide. People from every continent were sharing clips of Ethan crying as he was led away in handcuffs, juxtaposed against the damning footage of Megan planting the phone. Journalists flooded Denver International Airport, hoping to catch a glimpse of Ethan and Richard Cole. Cable news anchors debated the incident live, shaking their heads at how quickly prejudice and corporate greed had merged into one devastating scandal. "This is bigger than a single racist act," one panelist said. "This is systemic corruption, weaponizing discrimination for financial gain." Celebrities began to weigh in. A-list actors, athletes, and musicians tweeted their outrage. "This breaks my heart. An 8-year-old genius treated like a criminal. Shameful." At Real J. Miller, NBA star. "Every kid deserves to feel safe flying." Justice for Ethan. At Lydia Music, Grammy-winning singer. "Corporate sabotage targeting a child? Jail them all." Actress Lauren P. Ethan, still processing everything, sat quietly in the private lounge with his father and Daniel. His tablet pinged non-stop with incoming messages. Not hate, not doubt, but thousands of messages of love and encouragement from children all over the world. "Look, Dad," Ethan said softly, scrolling through message after message. "You're my hero. I want to be a mathematician like you one day. Samuel, age 10, Kenya. Don't let them make you feel small. You're amazing. Hannah, age 8, Canada. I'm also the only black kid in my advanced math class. Seeing you fight makes me feel brave. Aaron, age 11, Texas. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude. Dad, kids all over the world are writing to me. They believe in me. Richard smiled and hugged his son tightly. That's because you stood tall when it mattered. You showed them who you really are. Daniel grinned, scrolling through his own notifications. You've got fan pages now, kid. People are calling you the math prodigy who exposed corruption. Ethan blushed. I didn't mean to expose corruption. I just wanted to go to Boston for my math award. Richard laughed softly, but his face turned serious as he pulled up a document on his own tablet. It was a press release from Cole Technologies. He stood and walked to the podium that had been set up in the lounge for an impromptu press briefing. The media lights flickered on instantly. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Cole, what's next for your son? What's next for the industry? Richard raised his hand for silence. Today isn't about me or even about my company, he began. Today is about an 8-year-old boy who was humiliated because of the color of his skin, weaponized as a pawn in corporate sabotage, and treated like a criminal on a flight where he should have been safe. The room quieted, the weight of his words settling in. I want to be clear. We will pursue justice to the fullest extent for those directly involved. But that's not enough. This event exposed a deeper rot, bias in the way passengers are profiled and treated in our skies. That ends today. He held up the press release. Cole Technologies will work with federal regulators and every major U.S. airline to implement the most comprehensive anti-discrimination and passenger protection policy this industry has ever seen. This includes mandatory bias training, transparent passenger complaint review processes, and the installation of cabin cameras on every commercial aircraft. The crowd of journalists erupted with questions. One shouted, "Mr. Cole, is this just a response to your son's case?" Richard looked directly into the cameras. No, this is bigger than one child, even if that child is mine. This is about making sure no parent ever has to watch their child be humiliated because of prejudice. This is about ending the weaponization of racism for profit. As he stepped back, Ethan tugged at his sleeve. Dad, can I say something? Richard smiled and nodded, helping Ethan onto the podium. The boy adjusted the microphone nervously. Thank you to everyone who believed me when I said I didn't do anything wrong. I love math because math is fair. 2 + 2 is always 4, no matter who you are. I wish people could be like math. Just fair. The room went silent. Then, slowly, applause broke out. First from Daniel, then from Richard, then from the entire press pool. The clip of Ethan's simple, heartfelt speech spread just as fast as the scandal itself. By evening, hashtags like #BeLikeMath and #JusticeForEthan were trending together, both representing something bigger than any one incident, a demand for fairness, equality, and accountability. Meanwhile, Megan Price faced an avalanche of new charges after investigators tied her actions directly to Hawk Aviation's executives. Corporate espionage, conspiracy to defraud, child endangerment. Her legal team had no defense strong enough to counter the mountain of evidence, especially Daniel's video. In classrooms across the country, teachers shared Ethan's story as a lesson in courage and integrity. A popular educational YouTube channel even uploaded a video titled "Meet Ethan Cole, the 8-year-old math genius who took on corporate corruption." By nightfall, Richard and Ethan watched the world's response from the quiet of their hotel room. Ethan scrolled through one last message before bed. It was from a little girl named Maya in India. "You made me feel proud to be different." Ethan smiled and whispered, "Dad, maybe something good came from all this." Richard hugged him gently. "Something great, son. Something that's going to change the world." The morning after Ethan's story became a worldwide sensation, Richard Cole stood at the podium of a grand hall in Washington, D.C. Cameras flashed as reporters from every major outlet waited for what he had promised would be a game-changing announcement. Richard's voice carried across the room, strong and steady. What happened to my son was not just a personal attack, it was an attack on fairness itself. If an 8-year-old can be humiliated and framed because of who his father is and the color of his skin, then our systems are broken. Today, we begin to fix them. He gestured toward a large display screen behind him, which showed the words, "The Ethan Foundation, a 100 bumpers fund for talented minority youth." This foundation, Richard continued, is dedicated to identifying and supporting gifted children from underrepresented backgrounds, ensuring they have the resources, mentorship, and protection they need to succeed. No child should ever feel unsafe pursuing their potential because of prejudice or systemic inequality. The audience erupted into applause, many standing in recognition of the magnitude of the pledge. Ethan, standing quietly next to his father, looked both shy and proud. Daniel Brooks, watching from the front row, whispered to a nearby journalist, "That kid's gonna change the world, and it's starting today." By that afternoon, the U.S. Congress announced it would open hearings on discrimination and security practices within the airline industry. The incident had exposed deep flaws, not just in one flight, but in how passengers could be profiled and even targeted. Representative Karen Morales, chairing the special committee, addressed the press. "What we witnessed with the Ethan Cole case is unacceptable on every level. We are calling airline executives, aviation security experts, and civil rights leaders to testify. Our skies must be safe for everyone, regardless of age, race, or financial status." This was unprecedented. The airline industry, long resistant to outside regulation on passenger interactions, was now facing direct legislative scrutiny. Meanwhile, Atlantic Star Airlines, the carrier responsible for Flight 447, faced financial collapse from lawsuits, public outrage, and regulatory pressure. Its board, desperate to salvage what remained, agreed to an offer they never imagined they'd consider: a full acquisition by Cole Aerospace Holdings, one of Richard Cole's subsidiaries. At a press conference, Richard confirmed the acquisition. "This is not about revenge," he said calmly. "This is about rebuilding trust. Atlantic Star will be restructured from the ground up, with transparent accountability systems, mandatory bias training, and zero-tolerance policies for discrimination. This will become the gold standard for passenger care." Within hours, stock analysts declared it the most significant cultural shift in U.S. aviation history. 2 weeks later, Ethan stood behind a marble podium at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The blue UN emblem glowed behind him as ambassadors from 193 nations listened intently. He wore a small navy suit, a gift from his father, and clutched a piece of paper filled with notes. His voice trembled at first, but quickly grew strong as he began. 2 months ago, I just wanted to solve math problems and fly to Boston for an award. But something happened that made me see the world differently. People judged me before they knew me, and some even tried to hurt me because of it. But I learned something important. There are millions of kids like me, kids who feel different, who feel like they don't belong. Today, I want to say to all of them, you do belong. He paused, scanning the room as translators repeated his words in dozens of languages. Fairness shouldn't be rare. It should be normal, like math. 2 + 2 is always 4, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. I hope one day people can treat each other like math, equal, honest, and fair. There was a moment of silence before the hall erupted into applause. Delegates stood, clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Ethan smiled nervously and stepped back from the podium, where Richard knelt to hug him tightly. "Proud of you, son," Richard whispered. Global media instantly picked up the speech. Headlines read, "8-year-old genius delivers powerful equality speech at UN," and "From victim to visionary, Ethan Cole inspires the world." Back home, the Ethan Foundation received its first wave of applications. Thousands of gifted children seeking scholarships, mentorship, and support. Donations from other philanthropists poured in, growing the foundation's fund beyond its initial $100 million. Airlines across the world announced new diversity and anti-discrimination policies, many adopting the exact standards Richard's team had developed during the Atlantic Star restructuring. Daniel Brooks, now officially appointed as Chief Security and Ethics Officer for the newly restructured airline, summed it up best during an interview. "This all started because one kid wanted to do math in peace. That kid forced us to face our biases, our blind spots, and our responsibilities. He's 8, and he's already fixed what grown adults ignored for decades." Ethan, now hailed as both a mathematical prodigy and a symbol of equality, looked at his father one evening and said, "Dad, I think I like speeches almost as much as math now." Richard laughed. "Good, because the world needs both. People who solve problems and people who speak the truth." The grand ballroom of the Boston Convention Center was bathed in golden light, cameras flashing like fireworks as the world's press gathered for one event: the presentation of the International Mathematics Prodigy Award. For the first time in the award's history, its ceremony was broadcast live in over 80 countries. On the stage stood a small figure in a navy blue suit, clutching a crystal trophy almost half his size. Ethan Cole, 8 years old, had become not just a math prodigy, but a global symbol of resilience and justice. The MC smiled warmly. "And now, our youngest recipient ever, Ethan Cole, will say a few words." Ethan stepped forward, adjusting the microphone nervously. For a moment, the crowd held its breath, wondering if this quiet genius would speak. He inhaled deeply and began, his young voice steady and clear. "2 months ago, I thought math was just numbers. But then something happened that taught me math is also about truth. Math never lies, and neither should people. I hope one day we can live in a world where being fair is as easy as solving 2 + 2. There was silence, then a wave of applause, loud and emotional, echoing throughout the hall. Delegates from academic institutions, scientists, and journalists stood, clapping and even wiping tears from their eyes. Cameras zoomed in on Ethan's small yet confident smile. Richard Cole, seated in the front row, stood and embraced his son tightly when Ethan stepped down from the podium. "You were amazing," Richard whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "I just told the truth, Dad," Ethan replied softly. Behind them, giant screens displayed highlights from Ethan's journey, the viral footage of the injustice he endured, the global support he received, and his United Nations speech that had moved millions. But there was one additional shot that stunned the audience. Megan Price, now in an orange jumpsuit, being led into a federal transport vehicle, her face hidden from the cameras. The news anchors covering the ceremony didn't miss the symbolism. "This is the ultimate arc of justice," one reporter commented live. "The boy once handcuffed under false accusations now stands as a celebrated global figure, while the person who humiliated him faces years behind bars." Outside the venue, the streets of Boston were packed with supporters. Banners read, "Had justice for Ethan, #BeLikeMath, and fairness first." Children held up signs, "I want to be like Ethan," and "Math is truth, people should be too." Inside, journalists swarmed Richard, asking about future plans. Richard smiled, holding Ethan close. "Today is not about me. Not even about cold technologies. Today is about a child who reminded the world of something simple. Honesty matters. My son didn't just solve equations. He solved hearts that had forgotten fairness." Later that evening, father and son boarded a private jet for their return home. The plane hummed softly as it climbed into the night sky. Ethan sat by the window, his trophy buckled safely in the seat beside him. Richard sat across from him, watching quietly. "What are you thinking about, champ?" Ethan turned, eyes bright but thoughtful. "I'm thinking, if people were like math, they wouldn't hurt each other. They'd just work." Richard chuckled. "That's a beautiful way to look at it." He reached out and ruffled Ethan's hair. "And you're helping make it true, little by little." Ethan smiled faintly and looked back out the window. The city lights below shimmered like constellations scattered across the earth. For the first time in weeks, his chest felt light. The pain of humiliation, the weight of fear, it was gone. In its place was something new: hope. As the plane sliced through the clouds, Ethan's thoughts drifted to everything that had happened. The humiliation, the fear, the kindness of strangers. Daniel's heroic stand, his father's unwavering support, and the overwhelming global response. All of it had changed him, not into someone hardened by pain, but into someone determined to be better. He placed his hand against the cool window and whispered to himself, "Math never lies, and neither should people." Richard overheard and smiled proudly. "That's my boy." In the distance, a news helicopter caught one last live shot of the Cole family's jet silhouetted against the glowing horizon, broadcasting the image worldwide. Anchors around the globe signed off with similar sentiments. From a moment of injustice came a movement of hope. Ethan Cole's story is no longer about what was taken from him, but what he gave to the world, a reminder that fairness and truth are worth fighting for. The closing credits of the live broadcast rolled over Ethan's image, still looking out the window, smiling softly, holding his trophy as the clouds parted to reveal a sky full of stars. It was not just the end of an ordeal, but the beginning of a new story, one where an 8-year-old boy had changed how the world saw fairness and how the world saw itself.